Hey, how you doing?
Vance, hello.
Hi, all good?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Amazing. Let me just bring the microphone. Okay, is it better?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
We
Yeah,
should be much more focused on building rather than just talking about AI.
it's just, I absolutely agree. That's how I want to position our course. It's just going to be purely practice. We're going to be practical together. We're going to learn from each other. We're going to break things,
Yeah,
not going to
bring it.
work.
And then the agents will repair everything. Uh, yeah. I'm sharing my screen just quickly tell you the one idea. Since I was in Berlin middle of the month, I wanted to tell you this.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
So these are the average hotel kind of
Yeah.
rooms for different lectures and whatever. And there were some workshops where we moved the chairs and we had 5 people at the tables. You already tried Lovable, right?
Yeah, I did.
So this window here is the same as here in Lovable. So
Okay.
if you are a beginner or if you're a designer, it's better to start with Lovable and then export the files locally to your machine and open it up here. And then you will have the same files. All these files, let's say it has been done by Lovable. So you can actually continue prompting here. And Cursor and Windsurf has a kind of a algorithm or system prompt running behind it that helps you to correct all the mistakes Lovable did. Because with Lovable, it's promising, but it's still not production level app. So I would just bring them through these steps, like first hour, first half an hour, and then they should continue. And you can see the agent here. So the agent can do anything you want. So you can open up. This is very cool. So new window, you say, okay, you found a GitHub. Are you familiar with GitHub or have you?
Familiar, but I don't think I have an account live.
Yeah, so GitHub is a little bit intimidating if you are really just doing UI or just visual design, but you can get used to it. And you can search like cool weather apps and you find people what they are building and you can sort by sort by the not the best match but the most stars. And okay, this guy created an Android weather app and has 500 stars. So you can say, okay, copy this link from here that you must copy from there, from the code, and go to cursor and say clone. And I just passed. I select, and I've got a copy from this repository on my machine now. So you can see this is the guy did all these files, and I can ask questions that if I don't want cursor to change anything, I switch to ask mode. So I can what this app does explain. And it goes through all the files and tells me what I can do with it and how can I install it locally, how can I run it, how can I test, and then I can ask changes, change the font, change the colors, what a typical designer would do first. So that would be the intro quickly, if you agree with that, to bring them in and start breaking things, as you said. So you don't need to know code. You don't need to do anything. You just have a conversation with the AI.
I think even what you showed now in 5 minutes is insanely valuable, like genuinely. Just like taking them step by step. Maybe what we can do is we obviously going to have the discussions. I'll plan some like really cool warm-up games so we can just get to know each other. Do you think it makes sense before we jump into Lovable to try any tools for like actually framing and finding an idea that you want to build? Like how do you innovate? Because basically, like my point is that it's not that difficult to execute now, right? Like you can literally build some websites or like very easy plugins very quickly. It's not the point. Right now the battle is on the quality of your ideas. So how do you find that golden mine thing that people need right now? And I feel like I want us to spend maybe first few hours, maybe 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, just like pushing the limits of what's possible in terms
Absolutely.
of finding an idea. And then maybe we will pass over to purely these tools, and like exactly what you do now, it's amazing. We can go through a process of building something very small, very easygoing.
I started to collect these meta prompts to do some ultra deep thinking, so we can speak about the right way to prompt. We can have a look at ChatGPT because this is the most powerful one. Tell them that which model to use, what's suggested, and then start creating a project and create a meta prompt and build up, create the documents for Cursor and Lovable, because before exactly jumping on that train, as you said, that they need to have a 2 hours of planning.
I really like it. I think the more I was listening to this, I think the most useful bits were around like the philosophy of it, but also I wanted more practical implications. So that was like the constant idea that I had. I was like, how do we make those videos super applicable? Because again, I was chatting a lot about this with my friend, and she said like, the most useful thing that she is reading and following on AI was basically like little snapshots on like practical application, like what I can do right now. Like right now, what are the like cool thing that I can try and get the value and be a better designer. But on there, I want to be like just super practical. You can do this and this, or like you said, comparing different models. Which model is good for what in ChatGPT, for example, after trying it and using it for many different use cases. So just like all the practical stuff, like just watching you going from like Lovable to Cursor and like what is the workflow? I feel like that's insane. I feel like it's so good that it would be amazing to have videos in this.
Just a gut feeling is the short kind of practical tips, and for different audiences, what a product manager can do. So you need to be an AI engineer, AI developer, designer, and PM in the same, and a strategist at the same time. So for some videos we can do design focus, like UI, how can you be more efficient? Then we can take strategists like product people, founders.
Yeah.
How do you create a product from 0 to 1? If you are not a designer, you are not a developer, still you can do a prototype. And then we can do for developers, we can show them that, hey, your experience can be augmented with these tools because you've been doing this for 10, 15 years. But now with these tools, now you can like 10x your output. And it's an advantage to know all the systems. And you can refactor your old projects because manually coding is such a pain. Many people just give up.
Yeah.
But now it's possible to make them happen. I see 3 different, at least, or 4 different audiences to target, and not everybody at the same time.
Usually what I do, I go into deep research, and if it's something new, I would just run a competitor research just to understand everything that has been done already to solve the specific problem. But if we go one step even, I would obviously analyze all my research data and highlight all the main jobs to be done, because that's where you can find innovation, like something that hasn't been done before. So I would go deeper into like research data, and for the sake of the experiment, what we can do is just go and analyze Reddit.
All right.
Or community centers, or like comments of, let's say, all the complaints people have about weather app.
Nice. It's a good idea. Yeah.
And I can send you the prompt exactly.
Yeah, let's keep it simple.
Let's do this. I usually let me just see. So this is the prompt for the competitor analysis. Very basic.
So you are building an app now from 0.
So building a weather app, 0 to hero. And of course, I'm going to do my favorite part, which is the research. And imagine we do know there's a need for this kind of app for sure. We're not going to go into like user research as much, although, of course, AI is incredibly useful. I think it's really where it can make a difference, big difference in the quality of your output as a designer by understanding industry and knowledge domain, doing incredible end-to-end comprehensive competitor research, framing the research, creating research briefs, analyzing empirical research data if you have a lot of interviews on your hands. So this is where you can really be confident AI is the right tool to use.
And you have a template already.
And
Confident.
I have templates for user research briefs or like problem framing, like everything. But I don't think we need this at this point. We can keep it very high level and imagine we know the kind of problems that we're dealing with. And for the sake of the experiment and the example of creating a weather app, we're just going to start with something like a high level competitive research, because of course, as we've been discussing this with you, Ben's, execution of ideas and building new apps is so easy right now, like easier than ever before. Where you can really stand out in the crowded market is by having a very good idea or solving a problem that was not like from that angle that wasn't solved before. So this is why we will take a step back before going into code and really looking at, okay, like what are the things, the novelties, the like subtle improvements that we can add in such a basic app that we all use, but maybe we'll find something new and interesting. So let's go. The prompt we're going to use is very simple. We can go more high level. Let me know, Bans, if you want to tweak anything. But for now, we're just going to go into conducting a comprehensive competitor analysis, focusing on. You can mention the industry, or basically in here, we're just going to specify the weather apps. Handle a problem. So the problem we're trying to solve is something that I would ideally do a step before I go into competitive research. For example, in my previous project, let's say when there was like a grocery shopping experience, and first of all, I went and understood from the users that they really struggle to understand like how to pair the items together. So they were always like confused, what do I buy with what? And like it was a very time consuming exercise. So when I was going into competitive research, I was specifically asking, how do we solve a problem of guiding people into their like grocery shopping habits to help them really curate a list and buy things that go well with each other to take off that mental load. And I just focused on like how other competitors, direct and indirect, solving that specific problem. But because for the sake of this example, not really going that deep, Bans, any ideas on what problems do you want to focus on the weather app? What are your biggest struggle with the weather app?
Yeah, we can pretend to have a problem that we found now for this demonstration. But the top of my head, I don't know, people who can't read. There are some regions where the education has some issues and people still have phones, or they have limited understanding of complicated weather prediction and stuff, and the numbers, what would be the minimal. Nobody ever did weather apps for people who are in rural areas, have no education or very limited education.
That's really good. So we will focus on the problem then for weather apps, on how the other apps handling or not handling well the limited understanding of weather prediction for people in rural areas, or potentially with limited education. And then what we also can specify that, yeah, you can explore, they will need to explore 5, let's say 5 is enough, maybe even 10. As we know, the more options we challenge it to give, the better. Explore at least few 10 relevant platforms, and then you can specify the exact platforms that you want to look at, but I don't think we need this for the weather app, and analyze them across the following key areas. So in terms of challenges, again, you can go as specific as you want, or if you don't really have specific ideas on what do you want to focus on in the weather app, I think for now it would be something like displaying information in an easy and engaging engaging way, making UI simple. And keeping it broad, I would just usually just add another relevant areas to the user problem.
And on the top left corner, you might want to explore the different models output. If you have time, there's a tip. You can compare what, ChatGPT 4 or the basic one.
Ideally, I would run a deep research, but yeah, I don't want to.
You've got 22 available.
Okay,
Just
maybe not for
search,
this
just a
example.
simple search.
Let me see. I will just anything else that you would add in here just for would you add a role? Because usually I would add something as a researcher with 20 plus years of experience.
There are these extremely strong prompts on Twitter available.
Yeah.
There are some prompt libraries. You are always feel free to experiment with these kind of tips and from other people. That's the best way. Some people say that with the new models, you don't need to prompt engineer. So the system will find out what you
Understand.
need.
Yeah, you can only compare. Let me see. Let's just run this with 4.0 and I'll send you exact same prompt. And can you use it with 3.0? Let's compare the outputs.
Sure.
So going through a very basic, so this is extremely basic prompt. And what we have so far, competitor analysis, it found top weather apps, analyze it across user interface, information presentation, accessibility features. The weather app, so we have around 10 different apps. It did a really cool comparative analysis, which is, again, something that would take you quite a long time across UI, visual aids, voice support, and low literacy friendly. So we have a few examples here. I like that it really created a good structure in the report. So you have key insights in terms of simplicity, how crucial it is, visual representation with like icons and images, voice support, which is something, yeah, I didn't think about that much, but I think that's cool. And customizing offer flexibility. So allowing users to tailor the app experience. Need to have a look at this carrot weather. That sounds interesting. And then let me just regenerate it. It stopped somehow.
Mine is still thinking, so it takes a while.
I'm just regenerating everything because it crashed. But interestingly enough, something that I do like about ChatGPT, every time you regenerate an answer, it can give you a completely different way of looking at the problem, not even using different models, but even just regenerating with the same model. Like right now, it has this completely different table, which I think is way more intuitive and easy to understand. Like you can easily see, okay, so the visual simplicity is the best in terms of his opinion or whatever that is carrot weather and Yahoo. And then you have key findings. So yeah, a completely different structure, which is super interesting.
Yeah, that's why we say always that don't give us just one idea, but give us 5. Because then you can, as an expert, pick the best one or which fits your company or your project the best.
Yeah.
Don't expect only one response from the language models.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like in terms of recommendation, it only gave you 5, which feels like extremely limited. So yeah, what I would usually do, I would just challenge it to expand and give me like 20 ideas on how to make a better weather app.
Yeah, the problem here is that people are overwhelmed with ideas, and you have a limited time. You want to start coding, you want to start designing, but I have hundreds of pages of strategy and suggestions. So
Yeah.
you need to learn to skim read or somehow speed up your process that, okay, from these hundreds of ideas, what should I build at? Then there's a method. Everybody should have a own method, right? When cooking, have your own recipes and tricks in the kitchen. This is the same. We don't want to give you strict rules to follow, but just on a high level. Then give the context and just give me the best steps to build this. Give me a technical implementation plan. How should I prompt my code generation tool like Lovable, Cursor, or Bolt, and then you save hours of manual reading, or you don't need to read everything. That's what I want to say.
No, absolutely.
If you have some other, please share.
I would probably, is your still thinking?
Let's see. No, it's finished, and it's quite similar to yours. Yeah, it's very similar to your model, the 403 now with web search. So we've got all the links added, competitors, the main brands, and there's a comparison table and the insights. So it's interestingly very similar to the output of the two models. And there are some tips what to avoid and the closing thought, which is very handy.
Oh, interesting.
I don't bother to read it now, but you see the advantages. All threes trying to be more helpful rather than just give you a dump of information.
It's trying to propose ideas. I think that's where AI is going. And everyone in the GPT team was saying in the presentation that all three is actually starting to suggest good ideas for architecture and things like that. Yeah, completely agree. And I don't know, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I think that we've got 8 minutes, so you can start asking for a Lovable prompt to build this app, then an technical implementation that we can bring into Cursor.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As I said, I requested more ideas. It suggested some read to me buttons, gesture-based navigation, family weather alerts, so things like that. And I think it's helpful to do before we go into a prompt for a build itself, because it's going to expand and ground the response in some specific ideas. Something else I also quickly added is to conduct a quick research using public forums such as Reddit, Trustpilot, discussion boards, and then just gather real world user feedback in how people with low levels of formal education use weather apps. I think this would give us, hopefully, some interesting ways to really differentiate the weather app and make it good for the specific audience. So we have a lot of like recommendation for improvements. It's not extremely comprehensive, I would say, very high level. Not impressed, I would say. But let's now go for a prompt to build it. So as my workflow, I usually ask GPT or Claude to write a prompt for itself. Like you cannot make a better prompt than a prompt that is written by GPT, something I learned and tested many times.
In a real setting, I would just ask ChatGPT that, do you know what Lovable is? Because I'm not sure that it understood. So you can go back to edit your prompt. So first step, confirm that do you know this app generator or AI coding tool Lovable, and then if yes, then
let's see.
Okay.
It's very good because in the other tab I actually asked it to generate a prompt and it didn't know what Lovable was. So now let's ask create a prompt.
If you want to be really precise and you have time, then you can link to the documentation and prompt tips to your tool, and then it considers these kind of.
What if I just write based on the best practices how to prompt for Lovable, generate
Can be done as well.
To build this weather app, solving the problems we have identified.
And use HTML, CSS for now as a mock-up. Just needed complicated.
Like this?
Yeah, because it's just a test for now.
Yeah.
If we want it production level, then we need a precise tech stack describing the front end frameworks, back end, everything.
Awesome. So the way it's writing it's really nice. It's outlining the functional requirements, which can be quite intimidating, I think, for designers that don't really know how to create technical documentation. So it says everything like options to switch between local dialects, offline access, large clear buttons with icons. So yeah, it's quite detailed. I would definitely, if I have more time, add a proper maybe documentation format or template it needs to follow, but for now it's okay. It even outlines some design principles, which we didn't discuss, style, tone, optional enhancements. I think it would be great if we also give the brand tone of voice and guidelines if we build for a specific product and send some references in how we want the app to look like. But that's already the nuances. All right, so we have some basic mock-up. Are you happy to take over and show the Lovable process?
Okay, so Albina gave me the prompt, so I continue creating this app. So we've got inclusive weather app for low literacy rural users, very nicely defined. It can happen that Lovable will do more serious or more advanced. We use some more advanced framework and not HTML, CSS. If you want to pick your platform very accurately, in this case HTML or CSS, then you need to start in Cursor. But let's see what we get. You don't need to be technical to build like that at all. You don't need to read every line. If you are really interested and technical, you can judge all the prompts and every line, and you can overwrite if you don't like something. You can even add your design style and palette you want to use or fonts you want to use, but we can change that later. So I think it's working. And we can start the same in Bold. And Bold allows us to choose the platform.
Can you explain more what those platforms are?
Yeah, just a minute. So Astro is a blog platform, is open source. So it's the best way to create a blog now is using Astro. Vite is a front-end framework, is very flexible because any changes you make on the design, let's say you change a color or a font, it changes instantly. So you don't need to redeploy or you don't need to refresh. It's like when you design in Figma, it's live changes. Next.js is again a very broad framework, very popular. I don't know what native script is, to be honest. These are less well-known and less popular and a little bit older. Every platform has their own fan base and some special goals and environments, but for now, it's enough to speak about TypeScript, Vite, and Next.js.
Perfect.
Okay, so I start. You can always, ChatGPT again, you can always ask ChatGPT that, okay, I have this app. You gave me the prompt. What kind of framework do you recommend? So is it a good idea to go with Vite and JavaScript, or is it better to go? And it gives you a comparison table what to choose.
And you would do that, would you do that in ChatGPT itself? You just ask which platform to choose. Yeah.
Yeah, because everything has to be in context. So if you have your strategy, your go-to-market, your app idea, the features, then you can ask, hey, what do you suggest? What to use? Am I okay with just JavaScript maybe? And then it will give, ChatGPT will tell you that no, in this case with your app, JavaScript is a limitation because of that and this and that.
Yeah.
So it's a very nice kind of conversation. So people who are communicating well and asking a lot of questions, which is very annoying. For example, my family members, that I ask too much questions all the time. But this is how you how you plan an app, that you have to ask and ask. If you don't speak and you don't ask enough, then you don't discover the different possibilities.
I'm looking also for a reference image. Do you think we can upload like a visual example of how we want the app to look like?
Yeah, you can design for yourself in Figma, or you can find something that you like and attach
Exactly.
as an image. Lovable have some problems now. These, as we said, even the multi-billion companies can have problems of temporarily. So sometimes we need to switch. So that's why it's better to have multiple registrations. I don't say that you need to subscribe to them, a kind of a plan B when you don't. This happened now with Lovable. It's not building anything but boards. is finished. What it built, this is completely AI generated design, so not much was done by a human designer in this case, and it's accessible because we can listen to the forecast. It's a mock, it's not working, but we can say we download it and this is the downloads. And we have all the files needed to run locally with cursor. So if you are happy with this design, everybody suggests, and we suggest as well, to go to cursor, windsurf, or VS Code to continue, because I show you why.
And when I think, what is the point where you switch to Cursor? Is it when you're happy with how, let's say, front end looks like, with how the app laid out, and then you go continue with Cursor?
When you reach a point when you are happy with the front end and the mockup, so it's obviously it's possible to build a full working app with these tools like Lovable and Bold, but you don't have full control, or at least not now. Maybe in a future version, yes. It depends on your technical abilities, your prompting abilities. So there are people who never leave Lovable or Bold, and they can create apps. It worked for me to just the first 2 steps or 3 steps to be done in Lovable, and then go to Cursor, because then it's local, it's quick. I can edit files one by one, and I have so many features. We at the workshop we can go deep into Cursor, but for now, for the demonstration, just very simple. Even if you never did any kind of coding yourself, it's very easy to install Cursor on Windows or Mac. It doesn't matter. You download the zip file from Bolt or Lovable, and then then you open the folder, basically.
I think what would be also interesting, Vance, is why do you need Lovable or Bold before Cursor? Why can't you just go in Cursor from the get-go?
It's optimized for front-end design, so they can build a nicer UI, basically.
Got it. So can you just say that Bold and Lovable, etc., they're more like your front-end designers, and Cursor is your back-end designer or developer?
Cursor is a full developer, but the question is very valid and very good. Lovable and Bold has a very sophisticated system prompt that gives you a quick result, a nice prototype very quickly. In Cursor, you are completely alone, and that's the advantage and disadvantage, because you have full control on the front end, how it's being done, and obviously in Cursor you can change the language model. So you can try we could try the same weather app build from scratch with Cursor as well, and you can try out 5 times.
Yeah, let's try this. This is extremely helpful, like knowing, I think, the difference of the use cases in different tools.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's do it. And I also sent you a reference. If that's possible, it would be interesting if you go and open that Dribble application. I wonder how much it would apply the visual style.
It depends on the model. So 3.7 is a good designer, a machine designer, but sometimes Gemini 2.5, or even with the new O3 and O4 Mini, they understand the human aesthetic more, because that's how they have been trained. These are multimodal. So during my experiments, I noticed that the Claude, which is an Anthropic product, they don't see the nuances in the 2-dimensional space, while O4 is like a human eye. So they understand completely what you show them. So if they have a sample from a design, from a Figma PNG or whatever, then they can copy that better. But you need to find out yourself, because these models are being fine-tuned in the background every day or every week. So what I say now is maybe not valid next week. So maybe 3.7 will be the best in copying a design in front end. The best is to really try out quickly. So say, okay, I have 15 minutes now, max. I'm going to use the screenshot from another designer or from my designs, and let's see which is the best. And then when I have, okay, I've selected Gemini because this is the best now at the moment, I'm gonna use that. But for coding and overall production, 3.7 is absolute winner right now. You can go to benchmarks like Live Bench, for example, or 3 high is the best, but this is maybe not for your goals. It's a subjective leaderboard.
Yeah, based on what it's comparing the models, just an overall productivity. It's not specific to a task, is it?
Yeah. For example, sometimes I pick a model from here, from the middle, because for my app, this is working the best. And all 3 just damaged the code and completely had a wrong result. Yeah, so what we did, downloaded from boards all the files we needed. I've got the folder structure or the file structure, and I can say, explain what this app does. If I continue next day, I totally lost track what I'm doing.
So you did this mainly for yourself, not for the model to learn about the app?
Yeah, it's just for myself. And maybe it's not important, but I always tell to the model that browse through all the files and understand and learn the code base.
Yeah.
And what the other thing I always do, that run this locally for me, because I'm not a developer, let's say. And Claude and the new OpenAI models, they are agentic. It means that they can do tasks. They can do a lot of things. So you only confirm the steps. You don't need to do anything. Last year, for example, you had to run it yourself. So you had to type in npm install, but you don't need to do it now. You don't need to know how this works, really. So you have a development server running at this address. So you can say control click or command click, and it's running in Chrome.
Okay.
So this is a local, so you are not anymore in Lovable. So you can see that it's the same app is running.
A quick question. Did Lovable actually produce something at the end?
Maybe there are some error, some problems there. The other thing is that you need to always check the status or subscribe, because all the companies have a status page. So you can see that, for example, the API had a lot of problems last week. Sora is completely yellow. ChatGPT had some problems yesterday. And the same for Anthropic. For front end, for full stack development, we use Claude. That's the most popular one and the best. So if you have some problems, you are not alone. You can see that there's an outage. There was an outage on the 16th of April. So sometimes you need,
very helpful. So
yeah,
you
so
can,
you need to
you need to switch the models.
yeah, you need to switch a model, wait, or do something else. Okay,
Yeah, the realities. Okay.
this is the app, and I can say that change the font to, I don't know, playful. Use Google Fonts. And let's see. You need to be on agent. It should do it automatically. It overrides. I was referring to the playful font, and he just picked something from the library, and that's why it's not playful. Or maybe it's not playful, it's playwright. Sorry, I made a mistake.
Yeah, this font is.
Yeah. So you can see that the font has been changed to bubblegum.
I see.
You can
very bad design taste in the
Yeah.
Corsair, that's for sure. We know that now. So
Yeah, sometimes they do a good job on taste, sometimes not. So they are machines, they don't
I
know
think
taste.
I think with the taste and design and UI, it's better not to rely on accident. I think you need to be very prescriptive and send references. And as you said, fine tune everything in lovable or bold or relevant until you're happy with how it looks, as you
Yeah.
said. And then you go in cursor and fine tune all the like technicalities, basically, like fonts or margins or functionality or the interaction buttons.
Yeah. And as a designer or front-end person or UI expert, you can have your own rules in cursor. So if you hate a font or a color, you can say that never use this and that. Or if you have a favorite one, you can add to the rules. And this is a global rule. So cursor will follow your own personal guide.
Yeah, like global instructions, custom instructions in GPT.
Yeah, exactly. So every tool, if let's say we meet 1 year at a workshop, there will be totally different new companies, or they will follow the same. So every tool has a custom instruction somewhere
Yeah.
where you can build you can customize it to your liking. So it's incredible. It's incredibly powerful. So imagine writing this by hand, what people did decades long.
I used to write it and it was literally painful. Every line and then finding an error. This
Yeah,
is
you
terrible.
imagine that you just forget this, it breaks.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And then you need to find the line where there was a mistake. And now you can just ask. First of all, it writes with no mistakes of such sort. But then if there's a mistake, you can just ask to fix it or find it.
it's funny, they sometimes hallucinate and they make
Yeah.
a typo and then they can correct it. If someone wants to dig deep into cursor, you need to be familiar with local servers and how to stop them. You can stop either or with Command C. These kind of basic stuff can be learned very quickly.
Mhm.
The convenience of Lovable and Bold that you don't need to bother with this, what's
Yeah.
happening in the background. So you can concentrate on the front end. The advantage of bringing this into Cursor or Windsurf or VS Code, that you can change the framework if you wanted to, or you can do whatever you want. You can pull in additional libraries, so the sky is the limit. So it's unlimited. If you are stuck in Bolt, Lovable, then you are in their environment. There you are in the cloud.
So what else can we do with this app? As you said, we can obviously experiment with different libraries like Tailwind, potentially using some very high quality UI elements. But for the sake of this experiment, maybe like one little thing that we can add, maybe something interactive, maybe we can prescribe what would happen if, I don't know, is there any functionality when you go into forecast, potentially, like what would happen, or like whatever is easier and fast. Let's demonstrate that the app is actually working. Maybe we can just program what happens there. And let me see if I can suggest. I will just use GPT, suggest ideas for forecast in this app.
I wanted to just emphasize that it's very important to create a documentation with ChatGPT or even with
Absolutely.
Cursor. It's
Yeah.
usually a Markdown document. It's
Yeah.
.md and documentation. It's you can write anything what you want you to Cursor know about the app, the implementation steps, the libraries, APIs, everything. So it never forgets. It's a very crucial step. And that's
Mhm.
why you reminded me that we have to describe this forecast function here in the documentation so that cursor can follow. And then when you prompt, it will read the documentation, your plan, your strategy, your technical description, everything.
So every time you would request something new, let's say correct this little functionality, it will go back in the document first,
Yeah,
read through everything, which is amazing. Yeah, remembering the like goal that you're trying to reach, the audience,
the
the
audience,
information
yeah.
architecture, yeah, and then will make this not generic. I think that's the goal of everything that we want to teach and do. Like, how do we avoid generalized advice? How do we give enough guidance? So the response we get, is the right one for us. So very good point on documentation, something we will cover in the workshop. And I've asked for some cool ideas, and for our app, the forecast can include something like the chore weather guide. So you can show like when the like laundry or farming or market trips are good or not good, like some really cool tips. Do you want to challenge it and ask to include the chore weather guide? Just want to see what it will do.
Yeah, it's a tip to prompt step by step and not overwhelm the model, because then they
And
get
this is
confused.
specifically for Coursera that you need to give one step at a time, not always
It's
one.
always, I mean, it's the context window, the memory, but how you remember, the models remember is limited. So always give them one task at a time and not everything. Of course, if your colleagues are sitting next to you, you can tell them a long story and they will remember. But AI can focus only on one task. So it's like robotic. That's why it's handy to have a document where we have the whole story from the beginning to the end. So they always go to the documentation and refresh their own memories. And even they can skip. So you need to keep an eye on them. They tend to skip sometimes. So as you can see, it's modifying the code, adding new files. And the server is already running. So they make sometimes this mistake that they run again. It can happen. And it doesn't matter. So the feedback is very important, that you describe what the problem is. And if we go into more complex stuff, like very complicated problems, then it's a nice thing to open up the console in Chrome, so you can copy the exact errors what we are experiencing, and tell the language model, tell the AI that, hey, what you built is not working. These are the error messages. And then usually 99% of the time can handle that.
Love this. Some interaction is working, which is nice, but I think this would need some more time fixing.
Yeah, we were not paying attention exactly what usually the best thing is to read the feedback from both ChatGPT, Lovable, and Cursor, because they share sometimes stuff that they can't solve alone. They need decisions that, do you want me to build like that or like that? It's a lot of read now. So our job, daily work, is about reading and making decisions.
So I imagine another skill to develop is fast reading.
Yeah. It's very exhausting. It's a lot of information. But you can, if you don't understand something, you can always ask, sorry, can you repeat? Can you explain? Can you expand? Because I don't get it. And that's how I created some application with backend. I never learned backend before. And I said to Cursor that, hey, I never did anything like that. Can you explain to me what should I do step by step? Because these AI models assume that you are a developer. But if you describe as, sorry, I'm not a developer, can you just be very precise and very granular? Then they can be very patient.
Yeah, and explain step by step, like a 5 years old, and you will learn things eventually. Yeah, it's definitely a big help to be able to basically talk with the code, which never been possible before. So this is absolutely amazing. Like, just going through all this and building this step by step. I think I already have quite a few ideas of what I want to include in the workshop, considering like I want to go deeper on like diving into like documentation before we're going to go into build. It's like outlining design principles, outlining the target audience. Maybe that's something we do in the planning phase, right? We just create a document for the build. the one that we will upload
That's
for
the most
certain.
important, the planning
Exactly.
phase.
And that's what we're going to do. We're just going to focus on populating this document. So we do this document, and then in the second section, we just basically go to Lovable, fine-tune the interface, go to Cursor, build it. I think this is it.
And we can avoid these situations where we ask that, okay, can you do this feature for me? And it didn't work for the first try. But if we document it, that this is what should happen when I click on the forecast button. This is how you should build. This is the layout and so on. Everything explained to the AI, how you want it, then it can build it.
But I think it's extremely helpful to make a mood boards. What kind of style do you want for your app? Or maybe you want to generate some images for your app. So imagine we do something like, I don't know, let's say an app for books, and you want to generate some cool like banners to showcase some stories, whatever. Like you can actually now just use those tools to generate like very beautiful graphics to use inside of your app.
Even ChatGPT now can do a lot.
It is amazing. Like you can just send references, ask to tweak it, and it's going to be perfect.
Yeah, and feel free to experiment with the workflow. We don't have to follow rigidly this kind of thing, because we can say that
I like it. I think it makes sense to me.
it makes sense, but also we can spice it up with okay, now let's, after cursor, Lovable cursor, we have a running app, but we don't like the design. So we go back to ChatGPT. We ask ChatGPT to create a UI and code it, because it can create the React component from an image. And then we copy paste into cursor. So we merged 4 tools together.
Oh my God, that's just boom. I see what you mean, going back and forth. Like that would be it. I think like we need to showcase how fluid the work with the tools is. But first you really need to understand the nature of each tool. Like when you explained the Lovable, like it wasn't in my brain before. I was like, oh my God, yeah, that now my mental model is like calibrated.
They use the same tools as us. We have everything what they have, but they built a company around it. It's convenient. It's a white glove service. But in the end, you could copy the Lovable concept, and people copy Salesforce, Notion, Figma. There is no limit now. These are big brands, of course. They have a voice, they have follower base.
And if you can do it better, you can take over.
You can take over, and that's what happened with Perplexity now. That O3 is much better. They don't have anything anymore. So
Perplexity is irrelevant. It's just that's it. GPT released the image generation and released O3, and now I have no reason to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
For majority or like almost everything I do. But I really like what you said about we can finish building it in Cursor and then give them a task to go back and improve some code in GPT, copy it from some other app. Maybe it's like a very nice interaction or very nicely done feature. I don't know what that can be, but I really like
an animation.
Animation if possible. I don't know if it's possible because you said we can attach image. Can we attach like a video? How would you show the interaction you want to copy?
It can be CSS animation or something that ChatGPT can do. It can search the online sources, what's the best for the goal.
I don't understand, how would you feed the GPT that this is the animation I like on this app? Let's say how Airbnb opens up a new card.
I haven't tried yet. I would search for an animation that is coded. So it's not video animation.
Okay. So you find a library.
A library or a website example.